Most people think rich people are lucky. They think success was handed to them. They think wealth came from privilege, timing, or connections. They look at a successful man and assume he escaped pain. But that is a lie weak people tell themselves to feel better, because rich people suffer too. They just suffer differently. And that difference changes the way they think, move, and live. Poor people suffer from survival. Rich people suffer from responsibility. One man is stressed because he doesn't know how he'll pay the rent. Another man is stressed because hundreds of people depend on the business he built. Both are carrying weight, but only one learned how to turn pain into power. That is where the separation begins. The average person thinks money solves suffering. It doesn't. It upgrades the type of suffering you experience. When you're broke, your pain is obvious. It's bills, pressure, fear, and limitation. When you're building wealth, your pain becomes internal. It becomes sacrifice, obsession, risk, isolation, and discipline. And most people never understand that because they only study rich people after they win. They see the car. They see the house. They see the confidence. They see the results. But they never see the nights of doubt. They never see the years of rejection. They never see the silent war that happened before the success ever became visible. That is why rich people think different. Because pain trained them in a way comfort never could. Most people are raised to avoid discomfort. Take the easy road. Stay safe. Don't risk too much. Don't fail publicly. Don't look crazy. But the people who build wealth had to break that mindset. They had to become comfortable being uncomfortable. They had to learn how to keep moving when nothing felt certain. That's rare, because most people only move when they feel ready. But rich people, they move scared. They move tired. They move confused. They move while carrying pressure most people would collapse under. That is not luck. That is psychological conditioning. And it usually comes from suffering. A lot of wealthy people are not motivated by greed. They are motivated by memory. They remember what it felt like to have nothing. They remember being ignored. They remember being embarrassed. They remember watching life become easier for everyone who had money. And once you felt powerless long enough, something changes inside you. You stop chasing comfort. You start chasing control. Control over your time. Control over your money. Control over your future. Control over whether anyone can ever make you feel small again. That kind of pain rewires a person. It makes them think in a way average people never will. Because average people still believe life should feel good first. Rich people understand something deeper. Life does not reward comfort. Life rewards capacity. How much can you carry without breaking? How much pressure can you hold and still stay focused? How many setbacks can you take without becoming weak, emotional, and distracted? That is what separates the wealthy from the average. Not talent, not even intelligence. Pain tolerance. Most people break too early. They quit too fast. They want a better life, but they are addicted to easy days. And that addiction is expensive because every time you avoid hard things, you train yourself to stay small. Every excuse weakens your identity. Every delay feeds your fear. Every comfortable decision slowly steals your future. Rich people know that. That's why they choose a different kind of suffering. They choose discipline over distraction. They choose long-term gain over short-term pleasure. They choose risk over regret. They choose to build. And building hurts. It hurts to wake up early when no one is watching. It hurts to work when you don't feel motivated. It hurts to stay focused while everyone else is wasting time. It hurts to believe in a vision no one else can see yet. But that pain is productive. That pain has direction. That pain creates value. And that is why it's worth it. There are two pains in life. The pain of staying the same and the pain of becoming more. One slowly destroys you. The other transforms you. Most people choose the first pain because it feels familiar. They stay broke in the same mindset. They stay stuck in the same habits. They stay average in the same environment. And then they wonder why nothing changes. But nothing changes until you become someone who can handle change. That is the hidden truth behind wealth. Money doesn't just go to the smartest person. It often goes to the one who can stay calm in chaos. The one who can keep showing up when things aren't working. The one who can stay disciplined when emotions are screaming. The one who can lose, learn, adjust, and attack again. That is a dangerous mindset. And that mindset is built through suffering, not through comfort. Comfort makes people soft. Pain, when used correctly, makes people sharp. It teaches patience. It teaches focus. It teaches emotional control. It teaches you that no one is coming to save you. And that lesson alone changes everything. Because the moment a man truly understands that he is responsible for his future, he becomes different. He stops blaming. He stops complaining. He stops waiting. He starts building. That's when wealth becomes possible. Not when he gets lucky, but when he becomes hard to stop. And that is what most people never become. They remain too emotional for success, too distracted for discipline, too fragile for pressure. They want millions, but they can't even control a single day. They want freedom, but they live like slaves to mood, comfort, and habit. That is why they stay where they are. Because wealth is not only built with strategy, it is built with identity. You have to become the kind of person who can hold more pressure, more rejection, more sacrifice, more solitude, more responsibility. Because life only gives more to the person who can carry more. That is the trade no one talks about. Everyone wants the reward. Very few want the burden that comes before it. And that is why rich people look different mentally. They are not just chasing money. They are running from weakness. They are running from powerlessness. They are running from a version of themselves that once had no options. That pain becomes fuel. And fuel, when focus, becomes wealth. So no, rich people do not think different because they are special. They think different because pain taught them lessons comfort never could. They suffered in a way that forced them to evolve. They learned discipline through pressure. They learned patience through loss. They learned focus through struggle. And once pain teaches you correctly, you stop asking life to be easy. You start demanding more from yourself. That is where everything changes. The moment you stop saying, "Why is this happening to me?" and start saying, "What is this building inside me?" That is the moment you stop thinking like the average man and start becoming the one who cannot be ignored. Most people don't fail because they are untalented. They fail because they are mentally soft. That is the truth most people avoid. Because in today's world, softness looks normal. People quit too fast. They get distracted too easily. They break under pressure too quickly. They want results without resistance. And then they wonder why their life stays average. But average is not an accident. Average is built through repeated weak decisions, weak mornings, weak habits, weak focus, weak discipline. That is why rich people think differently. Because at some point, life forced them to stop being soft. It forced them to stop waiting for perfect conditions. It forced them to stop relying on feelings. It forced them to become disciplined or stay invisible forever. And most people stay invisible because they never build the mental strength to carry more. That is the real truth. Success is heavy. Money is heavy. Responsibility is heavy. Freedom is heavy. And if your mind is weak, you will drop everything life tries to place in your hands. That is why so many people sabotage their own progress. They ask for more money, but still think like victims. They ask for freedom, but still live like slaves of comfort. They ask for growth, but keep protecting the habits that keep them small. That contradiction destroys people, because your future does not respond to what you say. It responds to what you repeatedly do. And rich people understand that deeply. They know discipline is not optional. It is survival. That is why they guard their time so aggressively. Because time is life, and most people waste both. Hours disappear into scrolling. Days disappear into distraction. Weeks disappear into excuses. Years disappear into regret. Then one day people wake up and realize they are older, more tired, and still standing in the exact same place. That is a terrifying feeling, not because time passed, but because they passed through time without changing. That is what separates the wealthy from the weak. The wealthy understand that every day matters, every hour matters, every decision matters, because success is not one giant moment. It is thousands of small decisions made correctly when no one is watching. That is how powerful men are built, quietly, privately, painfully, not for applause, not for validation, but through repetition, through standards, through discipline so consistent that eventually the world has no choice but to respect it. And that level of discipline usually comes from suffering, because once life hits you hard enough, you stop treating your potential like a joke. You stop acting like you have endless time. You stop wasting energy on nonsense. You become serious. That is what pain does when it teaches you correctly. It removes your illusions. It shows you that if you do not build yourself, life will break you. And rich people understand that better than most. That is why they often seem intense. Because they know what it costs to stay average. Average costs your future. Average costs your peace. Average costs your options. Average costs your bloodline. And once you truly understand that, discipline stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling like protection. That is a shift. Weak people see discipline as suffering. Strong people see discipline as freedom. Weak people think structure is stressful. Strong people know chaos is more expensive. Weak people chase what feels easy today. Strong people build what will make life easier tomorrow. That is the difference. That is why rich people can delay gratification, because they are not hypnotized by temporary pleasure. They understand that pleasure can become poison when it controls your life. A lazy day feels good now, but repeated lazy days build a painful future. Overspending feels good now, but bad money habits create long-term pressure. Avoiding hard work feels good now, but avoidance quietly destroys your future. Everything has a price. You either pay with discipline now or regret later. And most people choose regret because it is invisible at the beginning. That is how life traps people. The consequences do not always show up immediately. That is why weak habits survive so long. People think they are getting away with it, but they are not. Life is always keeping score. Every distraction counts. Every excuse counts. Every lazy choice counts. Every wasted hour is building something, either a stronger future or a weaker one. And rich people know that. That is why they become obsessed with self-control. Because if you cannot control yourself, you cannot control your future. It is that simple. If your emotions control your choices, your life will always stay unstable. If your habits are random, your results will stay random. If your focus is weak, your income will eventually reflect it, because money follows value, and value follows discipline. That is the chain most people never understand. They want the reward without becoming the person who can produce it consistently. But consistency is everything. Not motivation for 2 days. Not intensity for 1 week. Not ambition when life feels easy. Consistency. The ability to show up when you are bored, when you are tired, when no one is watching, when results are slow. That is where separation happens. And rich people have learned how to live in that zone. That is why they think differently. Because they no longer ask, how do I feel today? They ask, what must be done today? That mindset changes everything. Because feelings are unstable, but standards are stable. And when a man starts living by standards instead of moods, his life begins to change. His mornings become sharper. His decisions become cleaner. His finances become stronger. His confidence becomes real. Because real confidence does not come from hype. It comes from evidence. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. That is why disciplined men walk differently. They trust themselves. And self-trust is one of the most valuable forms of wealth a man can build. Because once you trust yourself, you stop needing constant motivation. You stop needing perfect timing. You stop needing someone to save you. You become self-led. That is rare. And rare men create uncommon lives. That is why rich people think differently. Because suffering taught them one brutal truth. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to fix your habits. No one is going to rescue your finances. No one is going to build your future for you. That responsibility is yours. And the moment you fully accept that, you stop being ordinary. The biggest mistake poor-minded people make is this. They think money changes a man. No, money reveals him. If a man is weak before money, he will become more dangerous to himself after money. If a man is undisciplined before success, success will only expose his chaos faster. That is why not everyone deserves wealth. Because wealth is not just about receiving more. It is about managing more, handling more, carrying more. And most people are not ready for that. They want the reward, but they are not built for the responsibility. That is why rich people think differently, because they understand that before you can lead money, you must first lead yourself. That is the first battle. Self-leadership. Can you wake up when you said you would? Can you work when you don't feel like it? Can you stay focused when your mind wants comfort? Can you stay loyal to your goals when nobody is clapping for you? That is the real test, because the world does not care what you planned. It only responds to what you execute. And execution is where weak people disappear. Everybody talks in the beginning. Everybody has goals in the beginning. Everybody feels inspired in the beginning. But very few keep going once the excitement dies. That is why most people never build anything powerful. They are addicted to the emotional high of starting, but they are not committed to the lonely pain of finishing. And finishing is where wealth lives, not in ideas, not in talking, not in dreaming, in finishing, in consistency, in showing up long after mood has disappeared. That is why rich people often seem emotionally colder than average people. It is not because they feel less. It is because they have learned not to let emotions control direction. That is a superpower, because if your emotions lead your life, your future will always stay unstable. Some days you will feel unstoppable. Other days you will feel lost. If you keep obeying every emotion, you will build a weak and inconsistent life. But rich people learn to move beyond that. They build routines, systems, standards, structures. Why? Because systems protect you from your weaker self. That is why discipline matters more than motivation. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is a machine. One fades quickly. The other keeps producing even in darkness. And if you want wealth, you need machinery in your life, not random bursts of effort, not temporary energy, not a few good days followed by a week of excuses. You need systems strong enough to carry you when your emotions fail. That is how powerful lives are built. And that is what rich people understand. They don't trust moods. They trust habits. Because habits are proof. Habits show who you really are. You can say you want success, but if your daily actions don't reflect that, then your mouth is lying and your habits are telling the truth. That is a hard truth. But powerful men can handle hard truths. Weak men avoid them. Weak men protect their ego. Strong men protect their future. That is why they are willing to look at themselves honestly. They ask hard questions. Where am I wasting time? Where am I weak? Where am I lazy? Where am I lying to myself? That level of honesty is painful. But pain that reveals truth is useful pain. Because once you can see the weakness clearly, you can attack it. And rich people attack weakness quickly. They do not let bad habits sit in their life for years. They do not keep making excuses for self-sabotage. They understand that every weak habit becomes a future problem. That is why they think ahead. That is another major difference. Average people think about today. Wealthy people think about consequences. Average people ask, what do I want right now? Wealthy people ask, what will this cost me later? That one shift can change your entire life. Because many things feel harmless in the moment. One wasted morning, one lazy week, one bad financial decision, one distracted month. But repeated enough times, those small decisions become your identity. And identity becomes destiny. That is why rich people are careful about what they repeat, because they know repetition creates reality. If you repeat distraction, you become distracted. If you repeat discipline, you become disciplined. If you repeat excuses, you become weak. If you repeat standards, you become powerful. Your life is being shaped by what you practice every day. And most people are practicing failure without realizing it. They are practicing delay, practicing inconsistency, practicing avoidance, practicing comfort. Then they wonder why discipline feels so hard. Of course it feels hard, because they trained the opposite for years. That is why transformation is painful. You are not just changing behavior. You are breaking identity. You are killing patterns that once controlled your entire life. And that process hurts. But it is necessary, because if the old version of you survives, the future version of you will suffer. That is the trade. Either you suffer now through discipline, or you suffer later through regret. Either you face yourself now, or life humiliates you later. Either you become dangerous now, or you stay average forever. That is why rich people think differently, because they understand that the cost of staying weak is too high, too expensive, too humiliating, too painful. And once a man fully sees that, he stops playing with his life. He stops wasting his mornings. He stops making excuses. He stops moving like he has unlimited time. He becomes urgent, intentional, focused, and that is when things start changing, not overnight, but permanently. Because once your standards rise, your life can no longer stay the same. You begin to move differently, speak differently, think differently, spend differently, protect your time differently, and slowly, the world starts responding to the new version of you. That is how wealth begins, not with money, with identity, with discipline, with standards so high that your old self would not even recognize you. That is the real shift. That is the real transformation. And that is why rich people think different, because they learn the hard way that if you do not control your mind will destroy your future. At the end of the day, the truth is simple. Rich people do not think differently because they were born better. They think differently because pain forced them to grow in ways comfort never could. That is the truth. Suffering changed them. Pressure shaped them. Loss matured them. Failure disciplined them. And now they see life through a lens most people will never understand. Because once you've been truly humbled by life, you stop moving like a child. You stop expecting life to be fair. You stop waiting for perfect timing. You stop hoping things will magically change. You become a builder. And builders live differently. They do not complain all day. They do not spend all their energy talking. They do not keep announcing goals they have not earned. They work quietly, relentlessly, without needing applause. That is what makes them dangerous. Most people are too loud and too weak at the same time. They talk big but live small. They dream huge but move carelessly. They want respect but refuse discipline. And life sees through all of it, because life does not reward talk. It rewards proof. And proof is built through action, daily action, repeated action, painful action. That is how wealth is really built, not in one lucky moment, but in thousands of invisible moments where a person chooses growth over comfort again and again. That is what average people never see. They see the success, but they do not see the years of internal war that came before it. The mornings where quitting felt easier, the nights where doubt felt louder, the seasons where nothing made sense, the moments where everything inside you wanted to give up. That is the battlefield. And if you survive that battlefield long enough, you become someone different, someone stronger, someone sharper, someone more dangerous. And that is what wealth often looks like in its deepest form. A person who survived enough pain to become disciplined. That is why rich people protect their mindset so aggressively, because they know everything starts there. If your thinking is weak, your life will be weak. If your standards are weak, your future will be weak. If your discipline is weak, your money will never stay. Everything begins in the mind. That is why your first responsibility is not making money. It is building yourself. Building a mind that can handle pressure. A mindset that can survive rejection. A character that can stay loyal to the mission even when emotions are unstable. That is real power. And once a man builds that, money becomes a byproduct. Because money is attracted to value. And value is created by disciplined people. People who can solve problems. People who can stay focused. People who can carry weight. People who can remain calm while everyone else panics. That is rare. And rare people create rare lives. That is why rich people often look different from the outside. Not because they are magical, but because internally they are built different. They train themselves to think beyond emotion, beyond fear, beyond comfort, beyond the temporary weakness that destroys most people. And that is what you must become if you want more from life. You cannot keep thinking like the average man and expect an uncommon future. It does not work that way. You cannot keep waking up without urgency. You cannot keep living without structure. You cannot keep protecting habits that are poisoning your future. At some point, you have to decide, do you want comfort or do you want power? Because the truth is, you rarely get both in the beginning. Power is earned through pressure. Respect is earned through consistency. Freedom is earned through sacrifice. And wealth is earned through becoming the kind of person who can hold all of it without falling apart. That is the mission, not just to get money, but to become someone worthy of it. That is a much deeper goal. Because if you only chase money, you may gain it and still remain weak. But if you chase strength, discipline, clarity, and self-control, then even before the money arrives, you are already becoming wealthy in the ways that matter most. And once that internal wealth is built, external wealth becomes possible. That is the real game. That is the hidden truth. The world does not just reward desire. It rewards identity. So if you want a different life, you must become a different man. A man who does not fold under pressure. A man who does not run from pain. A man who does not keep betraying his own future for temporary comfort. A man who can stay locked in when nobody is watching. A man who can keep going even when there is no applause, no guarantee, and no proof yet. That is the kind of man life eventually rewards. That is the kind of man success respects. That is the kind of man who changes his bloodline. And maybe that is the real reason rich people think differently. Because they were forced to understand something early that most people learn too late. Pain can either break you or build you into someone the world cannot ignore. That choice is yours. Every single day, that choice is yours. You can keep choosing comfort and remain average, or you can choose discipline and become dangerous. You can keep making excuses and stay stuck, or you can become accountable and take control. You can keep living like life will wait for you, or you can finally decide that your future deserves a stronger version of you. That is where everything changes. The moment you stop asking life to be easier and start demanding that you become stronger, that is the moment you stop thinking like the weak and start thinking like the wealthy.